Okay, so what I'm going to tell you about now, just a bit of context about where I think the Green Party is now and where I think it fits into the debate about Trident and about public policy generally, and also about what the Green Party's policies to do with nuclear disarmament actually are, and I think why they fit into a broader view of society. I'm taking up what Sally talked about equity and solidarity, but thinking about that on a global as well as a national level, and also thinking about sustainability, about taking those important principles of equity and solidarity and making sure we've got a world where they can go forward into the future. So what the Green Party says, and I've got all the policy printed out, and the policy of course is made by the party members, not by the leadership sitting down and saying this is what we want, but by the party members voting on it. So it's something that can be changed, but this one probably won't be. Nuclear weapons are political weapons of terror, disproportionate to any threat. I think this is the key sentence. These are not weapons that are designed to be used. They're designed to demonstrate who's in charge, both within a country and internationally. They're there as symbols, which are there to say within the state, the people who are in charge are the ones who've got their fingers on the button. Not only that, but the kind of state we want to have is a state which has got a command structure that's always awake. You can imagine, about that guy in, it's Paraguay, isn't it? The amazing president, the best president there's been. Think about what the Swedes were like before someone shot Olof Palme. It's possible to have a state where the Prime Minister or the President lives as a private citizen and has an idea of what life is like as a private citizen. Once you get nuclear weapons, you cannot do that. You have to have a very different kind of state where the President is at the top of the decision-making process and is always going to be followed around by someone who tells him whose job it is to let him blow up the world if he gets annoyed. That's a different, and I think worse, and you probably agree with me, way to run any kind of government. But I think it's worthwhile thinking about. Once you've got nuclear weapons, you've inherently got a different and worse way of making government work and of thinking about government. You've also got a different and worse way of organising how the world works, haven't you? Because you've got certain governments, was it Bevan said, I'm not going naked into the conference chamber. It very much is about when the guys get together, or occasionally the women, because this is an equal opportunities weapon of mass destruction, get together, they can say, well, we have nuclear weapons, we are powerful, we can do this. If necessary, we can kill you all. And you tend to move into arguments and win face-to-face arguments differently, if that's the way you walked into the room. What they're not very good at, of course, is actual use. You'll note, and we can be grateful for the fact that nuclear weapons have not been used and aimed deliberately at people since 1945. They haven't really done much else apart from that, have they? They have not kept the peace in the world. The UK has been involved, I think it's about 23 wars since 1945. Nuclear weapons have not stopped any of those wars. They might have made it slightly more likely that the UK started some of those wars, but the chances are they had very little impact whatsoever. They're about power concentrated and distilled and put into a submarine, aren't they? And so, if we want to create a state which is as equal, as motivated by solidarity and as sustainable as possible, then getting rid of nuclear weapons is a key step we have to take and we should take. And for this reason, it's always been Green Party policy. We will do this immediately if ever we get in power, and it's something that we're not going to compromise on. Green Party policy also talks about why, it's other reasons why it's ridiculous. One being about law. International law, not necessarily always a good thing, but better than international chaos. Clearly, under every convention the UK government has signed, in terms of the Geneva and Hague conventions over the last more than 100 years now, have all talked about proportionality in war, one way or another. Nuclear weapons are, by definition, deeply disproportionate. So to use them, to threaten to use them, is to tear up every single one of these treaties, is to tear up international law. So when you walk into a room and say, we're going to sign a treaty, having nuclear weapons in there is a big way of having your fingers crossed. And everyone else in the room knows that as well. The other thing in which international law is important is the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the dangers of proliferation of nuclear weapons. Again, I think it's quite interesting that those states which have gained nuclear weapons in the last 40 years have been among the least democratic and most oppressive states. These are weapons directed against their own people as much as they are directed against foreign enemies. And it's interesting to remember that when South Africa finally democratised, one of the last things the bastards did when they handed the keys over to the people was to get rid of their nuclear bombs, proving that really the nuclear bombs were there to be dropped on their own country, not on any enemy countries, and they didn't trust the opposition with them. So proliferation is a problem. Nuclear weapons, the possession of nuclear weapons by one state makes it more, not less likely that nuclear weapons will proliferate. Anti-proliferation activity is best done not by using nuclear weapons or even by nuclear states, but by constant diplomacy. And by, if you are going to have to do anything military or forceful against proliferation, the last thing you do is do it with a nuclear weapon. They are war crimes, living and breathing war crimes, moving around. We're paying for them. It strikes me as being a bit ridiculous, and I'm glad to see there's a room full of people who agree with me. I don't want to go through telling you other reasons why you might agree with me, because I know you do. So where are we at right now in the political debate? We've got in Great Britain, there are Plaid Cymru, Scots Nats, the Green Party and Tusk, standing hundreds of candidates between us, all saying we're definitely against Trident. We have within the Labour Party an argument, and I think history would suggest, though, that those Labour PPCs who say we're against Trident before they get elected have historically tended to defer to the leadership, which is itself quite close with the British Atlantic Security Council and was the front line of the Cold War. They tend to defer to the leadership and say they're not going to get rid of it when they get in. And I do think that it's about time we stop behaving like Charlie Brown. You know, Charlie Brown is going to kick the football. Lucy says, I won't pull the football away. She always pulls the football away at the last minute. Charlie Brown always falls over, you know. They've had the Labour Party saying this to us for 60 years now. Oh yeah, this time, I really am against Trident. Yeah, I'll go in there and I'll ban it, you know. Oh, never mind that. Oh, you know. And so I think it's worthwhile thinking though that currently in the opinion polls we've got the SNP. I've got about maybe 5% of the UK population say they're going to vote for them. We've got about 5% of the UK population say they're going to vote for us. 10% of the population say to opinion pollsters that they're going to vote for credibly anti-nuke parties. So I think, you know, as I'm about to say, you know, if we could all do a bit more to get more of an anti-Trident vote, which didn't necessarily be a Green vote, could well be a Plaid Cymru vote, an SNP vote, and to stiffen up the SNP's opposition to Trident, because Trident or any successor, which is likely to rely on the same technology, it's almost impossible to base it in England or Wales. There's hardly any way you can actually put it without evacuating Falmouth. So, you know, if we can get an SNP which genuinely says what it's been saying for the last 40 years and says we're not having this thing anymore, then a lot of bets are off, because the whole thing becomes a lot more difficult for the UK government to justify. So that's probably how. So what I say unto you is get yourselves up to Scotland. Go canvassing for them, not us. Yeah, because there could be quite a lot to play for in this particular election. But I think it's worthwhile paying a lot of attention to the actual record of Labour candidates who say they're against Trident at this point in their careers. And you know, we have had some very good Labour MPs who have been genuinely against Trident and genuinely for nuclear disarmament, and have stuck their necks out. You know, and there are certain individuals that don't mean it this Bob, but you know, there are certain constituencies. If I was living in, I would be toying, do I vote Green or do I vote Labour? You know, but not this one or any of the Leicester ones. I think it's worthwhile then, as much as we possibly can, you know, in social media, in our communities, with our mates, with our relatives, trying to keep Trident on the agenda for the next 4 weeks. You know, trying to see what we can do about getting this anti-Trident vote to be record-breakingly high, seeing what we can do for the SNP, and again, fingers in your ears now, Bob. You know, if there are good Labour candidates who are genuinely for disarmament, then, you know, put weight behind them, particularly if they're in marginal seats. I think we have got a chance of delivering a strong message, and it's worthwhile having a go this time round. So, thanks for your attention.